Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to another open book broadcast with your host, me, Allie from The Right Place, Right Time, an international ghostwriter, book coach, and award-winning author. And I love to gather my guests for open book broadcasts to talk about anything and everything, writing and publishing, and all the things in between. And today I have three really wonderful women who I absolutely adore spending time with and who have fabulous books out there in the world to talk with me today about bravery and believing in yourself. Getting rid of those limiting beliefs, those pesky little nagging voices that tell us that we can't, we shouldn't. And they're going to help us with that conversation today, as well as tell us about the fabulous books that they have out in the world or that are coming into the world very shortly. So before we strike up a conversation, I want to formally introduce each and every one of them so you know all the fabulousness that is around the proverbial table today. Not starting in any order of favoritism, just in order of how the bios appear on my document. I want to introduce Susan Glover. Susan serves as the founder and CEO of Tour de Force Partners, a leadership and organizational effectiveness practice. Susan's passion for organizational effectiveness, leadership, and governance inspired her studies at Hood College, where in 2020 she received her doctorate in organization leadership. As an author and founder of Tour de Force Partners, Susan now focuses on creating positive change for leaders and their team's performance, leveraging 25 years of executive leadership experience and her studies in organizational leadership to create positive change in leaders and their organizations. Susan recently authored her first book, Connected, a guide for optimizing leadership performance, effectiveness, and joy from the inside out. And folks, please note, Connected is Kinected, as in the kinetic chain, not as in connected to each other. But there is a little bit of that happening. I'll let Susan tell you about it in a second. Next, I'd like to introduce Lisa David Olson, who's practically world famous business humorist, interactive speaker, author, podcaster, performer, and customer service guru who shares how humor connects teams and even strangers. Olson is a multi-TEDx speaker, speaker mentor, and professional nag, also known as accountability buddy. Her interactive presentation style and tools from the stage to real life are sought out to re-energize stale thinking. Olson demonstrates how humor is a genuine connector with the bonus of health benefits. She has an interactive card deck called the Dare Zone, the fun-making game of prompts, and a new book out, From the Spotlight to Real Life, Tips from the Stage to Reignite Teams, Spark Communication Skills, and Encourage Speakers. All right.
Thank you.
Such a dynamite lineup. I can't even stand it. All right. Last but certainly not least, Jen Coken, who's been featured on ABC, MSNBC, and TEDx. Jen Coken is an internationally recognized executive leadership coach, speaker, and best-selling author with 25 years of experience empowering leaders to break barriers and lead boldly. Known for her no-nonsense style and relatable humor, she has guided nearly 10,000 global leaders, including Fortune 1000 CEOs, to drive real transformation. Her upcoming book, Make Imposter Syndrome Your Superpower, which is out in March, gives women in STEM actionable tools to transform self-doubt into a leadership superpower. Through impactful retreats and keynotes, Jen equips women to claim their authority and inspire lasting change in their industries. Welcome, ladies. We're here.
Allie.
Thanks, Allie, for having us.
Excited to speak with you all. So first and foremost, before we go diving into bravery in believing in yourself and tackling limiting beliefs and imposter syndrome, I want to give you each a chance to talk about your books because they have all been labors of love. Would you all agree?
Yes. A lot of labor.
A lot of labor.
A lot of labor pains.
Lots of laboring. So I think what I'll do is I'll go in order of whose books came out in what order. So Lisa, your book came out last year now? Was it already a year ago now?
Yes, it's the anniversary month.
Yay!
Happy anniversary.
Yeah. All right. So Lisa, tell us a little bit about your new book, From the Spotlight to Real Life.
Ta-da!
Ta-da!
What I love to do is use my 2 decades of performing and leading workshops and speaking, and what I've learned from the stage of being an improv ninja and comedic performer. And I think Carol Burnett, Lucille Ball kind of stuff rolled into, me. And I love to do improv, which is using audience ideas and it creates the scene right then and there. So right then and there, from your seat, you are part of this show. You don't even have to get up. People love it. I love to do corporate gigs like that. And what I did with my book is using those tips that I learned, all of a sudden the light bulb went off. As my fellow authors know, that moment hits where it's like, wait a second, I've learned something that other people could probably benefit from. And you realize that the listening skills it takes to do a scene on stage, that your body language matters, being approachable, being the yes and, which means I allow your idea into my brain. It doesn't mean I have to do it, but it means I don't say no. Well, I'm going to tell you this about that. You can use this in the workplace. You can use this with your partners, with your family, with your friends. So there's a lot of things I've learned over the 2 decades plus that I've been doing this that I finally put into book form. I included improv games people can play right now, as well as a quiz to find out if you're funny. And what I enjoy, one of the most things that I have a passion for right now is helping new speakers. And I can show you why you don't have to be afraid on stage, as well as telling you what not to do when you do get on stage.
Love it. I need to know, what's one of the questions on the quiz about, like, are you funny?
Ooh, I wrote this so long ago that I'm going to have to find it. But
I have to know. I have
so
to.
You want you're funny.
While she's looking, Lisa, I want to say that you named 2 of my 3 top comedians. The other one's Lily Tomlin. All rolled into one. Those 3, hands down. Carol Burnett, Lucille Ball, Lily Tomlin.
Yes. So much that. And it's because they're physical.
Yes. And they're facial. They give good face.
And watching the Carol Burnett show when they try to back each other up. Okay, Allie, here's the question.
Okay, let's do it.
What is your preferred method of communication? Is it A, text? I can't get enough of answering in emojis. B, talking. I want you to stare at me while words come out of my head. Or C, carrier pigeon. I may not like your note, but I do love to have new friends that fly.
C.
So you're C. If you have mostly C answers, you are funny. And now it's up to you to help others. And you have the burden of being naturally funny. And you have to guide the rest into the happy region of ha-has and guffaws.
That was me. Allie didn't answer yet. That was me.
I'm like, I don't even know. Like, the choice, the carrier pigeon is hilarious, but talking out of my face also really
having people stare at you uncomfortably.
Because sometimes that's how I feel when I'm doing videos by myself. Is like, I'm just like here doing the thing, like, and there's nobody on the other side to let me know if they're even watching. Like, yeah, I feel like it's just me talking out of my face. Love it. I love it. Oh, Lisa, I'm so glad you're here. You always bring it. You bring it, my friend. All right. So Lisa's book can be found on Amazon. I'm going to put the link in the comments for y'all. Please note that if you're catching us live right now, or you're going to watch the replay on LinkedIn, that the comments won't be updated there until after we're done speaking, but they are available to you on Facebook and YouTube if you're catching us there at the moment. All right, Lisa, we're gonna hear more from you and your fabulous self here in a moment. Next up, I want to talk to Susan. Susan, tell us about your first book.
I will.
Okay.
And Allie is right. You can see it is connected. And you can see the picture, the cover, which was actually painted by a very good friend of mine. And it is the beach in Nice, France, because it's one of the most peaceful places I've ever been. And so Connected definitely has been a labor of love for me. First off, and probably to our topic today, I didn't really think I could write a book. So that was the first step. And I worked on writing a book for about a year, and I was like on a hamster wheel. I had lots of little white papers, lots of thoughts, lots of things. And then I was able to connect with Allie. And that's where all of this great thinking got on the road. So you might be wondering, what is Connected about? So it is about your kinetic chain. So I personally believe that you have to be your best self every day. And I believe that it is alignment in your own body. having a healthy kinetic chain, being healthy mentally, physically, spiritually, they all play on each other. And so if you start with that and you can lead yourself, then you really have the opportunity to lead others and organizations and create the culture that you want to have. But here's the surprise. Organizations have kinetic chains as well. And a lot of people don't really think about organizations that way. They think about them maybe as organisms. They think about them in terms of their structure, in terms of their culture, in terms of their governance. But all those things I just mentioned are really make up the organization's kinetic chain. And so my book's really starting with yourself. It's an inside out job that then allows you to work with organizations. Now, what's most interesting about this book, it's not quite as funny as yours, Lisa, although you will laugh at times in the book. I went about and interviewed people that I know that have been important to me in my life to hear about their stories. So their stories are wound into my thinking, and I've got a diverse group of people. I've got CEOs, I've got former NFL football players, I've got trainers, I've got physicians, I've got just normal people, and that are really kind of part of their story and how their beliefs in leading themselves have helped them be successful. But last but not least, in every chapter, you have the opportunity to reflect on questions. You have the opportunity to develop your own personal mission statement, to think about how you can create and find joy every day. And my goal was really to have a coffee table book. And that means that a book that, you know, you can come back to over and over again when you feel like you have drift in your life. So I'm really excited to be part of this group here today. And yeah, I actually felt sad when I wasn't going to write anymore when the book was done. So I don't know what's ahead. Maybe another book.
Oh my gosh. I feel like there are two camps of people. The people who are like, yeah, let's do it again. And the people who are like, never. I would rather actually give birth. Like, I don't know, like I would rather do something really painful and excruciating and tough than write another book. All right, Susan, it's great to have you here. It's great to hear about your book. Looking forward to talking to you this morning. All right. And again, last but certainly not least, Jen Coken, tell us all the things about Make Imposter Syndrome Your Superpower.
I already sent it by carrier pigeon. Didn't you get it? It was a giant scroll.
No, I was too busy talking out of my face. I couldn't receive it. I was too busy talking.
I think it's more like your pie hole, not just your
my
face.
pie hole.
Your pie hole. Your pie hole. This is what 2 years of working on this book. I wrote it for two reasons. One is I'm sick and tired of people labeling people with imposter syndrome, of people thinking it's a bad thing. If you go on, not Amazon, on Google and look up how to overcome imposter syndrome, as of January 2024, there's 3.3 million tips, tools, and tricks, and none of them work. Why? Because you and I have brains. We're alive. That's how we know we have brains. We may say to other people they don't have a brain, but the truth is because they're alive, they really do. And because we have a brain, we have an amygdala. And because we have an amygdala, anytime we get caught off guard, we get put on the spot, we get promoted, we are asked to speak up in a meeting, there's an immediate amygdala hijack, AKA imposter syndrome. And so I wanted to make sure that people understood that it is not a problem to have imposter syndrome, because Lord knows folks have sent me people and they've said to me, my boss told me I had imposter syndrome, and I just want to throat punch a person. Because nobody gets to put baby in the corner. Nobody gets to tell you. And it's not a syndrome either. It's not a medical diagnosis, for gosh sakes. So I wrote the book because the way that I work with my clients is we look at the neuroscience behind the brain pattern that put together this originating incident where imposter syndrome seems to keep triggering you when you're about to speak in front of your peers or you're about to go get that raise. And I specifically focused on women in STEM and other male-dominated industries because I used to be one of them. Physician, heal thyself. But more than that, so often we feel like square pegs and round holes. And I say, don't become rounder, make the hole squarer. And this is my way to work with these women to understand, or really it's anybody can read it, but I have a specific passion for women leaders and those that are aspiring to be leaders, to lead with more authority, influence, and impact. And what I mean by that is authority for me is about authenticity, because the root word is the same. AUTH is the Greek word for self. How do you be true to yourself in the midst of bro finance, in the midst of being the only woman in the room, which that was me many, many times? How do you retain honestly, your femininity? Because we don't need, hate to call it out, but Sheryl Sandberg's book, Lean In, there's a great book called Lean Out. And the point is, we don't need more women leading like men. We need more women leading like women. So when you lead with more authority, it's about authenticity. It's about that natural confidence that people kind of go, I don't know who Susan is, but I'm going to follow her off the face of the earth because she just exudes confidence. The influence piece is truly about flowing energy and life into your team. And when you put those two things together, I say you can make an impact and a legacy that lasts.
Ooh, mic drop. What I love about
thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. And that's it. That's all we have time for. What I love about every single one of your books, though, is that even so Jen, yours is pretty focused on imposter syndrome's right in the title. But if we think about how Lisa described her book or how Susan described her book, everybody's touching on overcoming something that's preventing them from being better or improving in some capacity, right? So Lisa's making it very possible to communicate with more pizzazz, or to be a better speaker, or to spark more energy in what they're doing, right? But you have to have a good head game in order to do that. And Susan's asking people to really look inward in order to then be a better leader outward, right? And again, there's that whole where's your mindset at? How are you seeing yourself? And then how are you engaging with others as a result? So it's not by accident the three of you are here today to talk about bravery and believing in yourselves, because I think each of your books are helping people do that in their own way, even if you're not calling that out as the main message, right? It's like a subtle nudge. What I do want to hit on today, though, is, have you ever experienced your own imposter syndrome or limiting beliefs, however you want to phrase it, as you were working on your books, as you were preparing to share your own thought leadership or story, right, with your reader? Did you ever bump up against the idea of wait a minute, should I be the one to have the authority over this topic? Am I really an expert? What might people think? I mean, did you question any of those things? Did you struggle with any of those things as you were developing your manuscript? And this is now the informal conversation and dialogue portion of our time together. So I'm not calling in anyone. Just have at it. No carrier pigeons. I need pie bowl.
I'll answer for no and, right? Instead of yes and, also having done improv, no and. And what I mean by that is, I wrote the book and specialize in doing what I do because I worked my way through. I was a coach for a big international personal growth company. And when I hung out my own shingle 10 years ago, it was kind of who am I to say whatever I'm saying? What's my thought leadership? What do I have to say about this? And I remember specifically working for a big tech company in 2019. And when I wasn't out coaching or training or on site somewhere, I legit was couldn't get out of bed. Just what the heck am I doing? Is anything I'm doing making a difference? And I think all that led up to it. But when I was so on one hand, no. And when I was working on the book, which took me 2 years, I had to dig pretty deep to figure out the framework. And there absolutely were moments of doubt, right? Moments of not necessarily feeling like a fraud, and not necessarily could my voice be heard in a crowded marketplace. More, is what I'm saying going to get across? Is what I'm saying going to make a difference for anybody? Because that's the only reason I think any of us write a book, is we want to help other people. And so from that perspective, yes, it was yes and no and.
Right. Beautiful. Lisa, Susan, you want to jump in here? We're not talking about how you confronted it just yet. Just was there something? Was there something?
Absolutely. This is my second book. I've also written a journal and created a card deck of a game that we do when we're together. It's prompts that help you do storytelling and things like that. And I know that Susan touches on storytelling in her book. So I think that's an amazing communication tool. Regarding imposter syndrome, I had that before I knew there was this cool name for it, because the first book, memoir, came out. And until I got an editor who really pushed me, I thought, why is anybody going to buy my book? I don't have fancy initials after my name. In fact, I only finished 10th grade in high school due to the way I grew up, which I talk about in my first book. So there was many, many challenges I had. Why in the hell would anybody buy my book? And I had a mail carrier that was at this coffee house. In fact, it's his birthday today. And he would say, he'd see me on my laptop and he'd say, oh, are you writing another comedy sketch? Because my comedy troupe does sketches and improv. And I said, well, I was trying to do a book. I just honestly can't picture who would want to read it. I'm saying it in just a flippant way. He said, I want to read your book. So I wrote my book. And that's how I got over it, was that one person showed interest in words out of my head. I wrote my book. And that's how I was able to do my journal of creativity and prompts, as well as my most recent book, because one person gave a crap.
Yeah. Oh my God. We're going to talk about relevance here in a second. Susan, I want to give you a chance to jump in.
Yeah. So, one or two people gave they cared. I'll let it be that way. And I think for me, and I'm not going to call it imposter syndrome. I'm going to stick more, for me, a word about confidence, which I know, you touched on that. I gained that when I was doing my work in my doctoral study. Going in, so I probably had more of this syndrome, this confidence syndrome, going in and doing that. And honestly, doing the research and writing my dissertation was the hardest thing I'd ever done. So by the time I got to the book, I needed to be put on a path, but I believed so much at that point because it worked for me in my life. What I write about in the book, it's my story added in with other people's stories, and it worked for me. It made me a better person, a more confident person, a more connected person to my own self. So I had most of that, what you all are talking about, I had most of that more during my doctoral work. But there were, I think, times in writing the book where, okay, am I really bringing something forward that is different? I believe it was different. And the validation point was along the way, I would have some different colleagues read pieces of it. And they were like, yes, this makes sense to me. And nobody's said it this way. And I could see where it would make a difference for you. And I'll finish up by saying, it's funny, one of the individuals that I had do a testimony, he and his wife, it's Susan and Peter Glacier, they do worldwide, mostly communication, leadership, practice, consulting. And Peter said, yeah, I'll read your book. And he wrote me in his first line, he said, I really was quite skeptical that anybody after 40 years would have something to say that would make a difference. And apparently, in fact, I did. He said that. So, wow, that was just like a boost in the arm. But I love what you say about women. I think women executives are very different than male executives. And quite frankly, men, we have to show up competent and confident in a very eloquent way. Men just have to show up like they're confident. So that's not something I touch on in my book, but it's certainly something I touch on in my practice.
Yeah. I think what's interesting is like all three of you really hit on, is anybody else going to care? It really, right? Is what it comes down to. And in the work that I do as a coach and as a ghost, always at the front of the list of like challenges, barriers, fears is this question mark of, but who will care? Why will it matter? Why does my voice, why should my voice carry any weight over somebody else's voice who could say something similar, right? So whether we pick that apart and it comes down to being doubtful of, let's say, our education, right? In Lisa's case, right? I think for you, Lisa, having completed the 10th grade, you made up some sort of limiting belief or narrative or story about yourself, based on that was gonna block you, right? When we break it all down and we tear it all apart and we get to the root cause, right? At the end of the day, we want to make sure that we matter and our voice matters and our truth matters, but also that somebody else is going to get something out of it, right? That we're going to be in service to others. And I think that's that's almost like a healthy limiting belief, to want to serve someone else so badly that you're wondering if you're the right person to do it. So, I don't think limiting beliefs are like all bad. Does anybody want to weigh in on that? Like how they can actually be in service? Jen?
Well, I mean, I say two things. One is, whenever I go to speak, if I don't feel like I'm going to puke before I get on stage, I don't have anything at stake. Like then it's just kind of like it's just like a carrier pigeon, just bringing the speech on in there. And, I'm sure Lisa can identify with that. But, I think, what do I think? The reason I say make imposter syndrome your superpower, and one of your other questions was like, how did you dismantle it? What I've come to find out, both in doing the work on my coaching experience, each one of us, we just shorted out. I don't know what happened. I feel like everybody has what I would call like 5 to 7 case issues, like and not dramatic, not traumatic, but these 5 to 7 those where we made a decision, and that decision impacts us today. And that's why I say imposter syndrome is your superpower, because your limiting belief that you put in place, because it looks like everything keeps spinning on the screen. I don't know if anyone else is experiencing that.
Yeah.
We're experiencing you having that happen. but we're all good. But what we did catch was that you were explaining, the 5 to 7 kind of like events that could have happened when we were younger, that could have led to us continuing to act accordingly to those events, going forward. I think you were talking
right, but
about
but the thing that happens, yeah, I mean, when I think about an amygdala hijack, in that moment, the body experiences an unwanted emotion, and when the body experiences an unwanted emotion, the brain has thoughts that are limiting, and then the brain goes, "Don't want to have this happen again. What do? I'm going to get it right. I'm going to be strong. I'm going to do it myself." And those particular beliefs have helped people succeed. And when people get that light bulb moment, the logic is inescapable. So I think a limiting belief is a limiting belief only if you let it limit you. And it's only if you haven't gotten to the root of it to separate fact from fiction, to see where it comes from.
Yeah. Okay. So folks who are paying attention, and I see some eyeballs on this video. So if you've got questions about this topic, drop them into the comments. I'll bring them to our guests. So it sounds like one of the things that we really can do when those limiting beliefs pop up is to really ask ourselves, well, wait a minute, where has this been in service to us, right? So that we're not just looking at it as wholly bad and wholly holding us back, right? And then Jen, you mentioned separating fact from fiction. Can you just give a quick example of what that might look like for somebody to use as like a tool?
Yeah. So the first, I use two things: early or similar, and then ultimately when you get to the root of it. So if you just think about the last time you got sweaty palms when you walked into a situation, or you felt put on the spot, or you lacked confidence, you write that whole thing out, including the body sensations, because that's really important: gut, heart, head. And then you ask yourself, is there any early or similar circumstance? Back till you get to the first one that you can remember. And generally, an example is I had a client who was a COO of a major trade organization, super successful, but she also would never give herself a break. She was such a perfectionist, driving herself crazy, stressed out. And we got to, when she was 9 years old, she brought a C home on a report card. Her dad freaked out, told her, that's average. She said, yeah, but why'd you get the C? She goes, Dad, it's average. Give me 1,500 words on average. And right, it's the relationship to authority is what I've seen, a relationship to belonging. So in that moment, gosh, I better get it right. I better get it right. I better get it right. Which if you're a CFO or you're head of HR, you better get it right. Which propelled her. Once she saw it, she no longer had a 9-year-old running her life.
Wow. That's awesome.
That's powerful. Can I build on what you just said? Because what you just said brings me around to my thinking about triggers and people doing the inside out work to figure out what their core triggers are, because we each have triggers and a lot of times they are all at the same root. But if you know what that trigger is, then you can watch for that trigger.
Yep.
And it allows you to get ahead of it. And the bringing the C home, that's pretty funny. That was kind of like the way I grew up, right? Like, don't bring a C. And if you brought if you brought A's and B's home, make sure they're all A's and they stay that way. But what I found fascinating in doing this work for the book and my own inside out study, I found what the core of my trigger is feeling like someone is disrespectful. And while that seems pretty simple, disrespect can show up in a multitude of ways that then becomes the trigger. So once you can start understanding, right, that's like leveraging your superpower is understanding what that trigger is. So when you see something happen, you can take the breaths, quiet the amygdala down, and be in control, lead yourself. Yeah.
I like the trigger part, like understanding what might be the impetus for a belief so that you can then implement Jen's, strategy of like really separating out fact from fiction. I think that those are really important components for sure.
Lisa, you had your hand raised before.
Yeah.
She's excited.
I'm reactive. Ignore me. It is
Okay.
What Susan and Jen are sharing, which is so critical and helpful. I love the stepping into imposter syndrome because that is such a catchphrase, as is authentic. But when you broke that down to auth being self, I mean, people need to hear this stuff. For me, what I learned in one of my therapy sessions is when you hear that voice saying, you can't do that, you're not smart enough. You brought home a C. Who gives a heck about what you write? That is the voice you pay attention to and say, oh yeah, hold my double skinny frap and watch this. When you hear that voice, that is when you are supposed to act on it. That is yourself daring yourself. And boy, do good things happen on the other side when you hear that voice and honor that voice by saying, no, watch me go.
Yeah. It's so interesting that you said that, because it reminds me of a client I had who one of these trigger events, she was like 11 and her cousins had a lot of money and she went over, there was this big pile of brand name clothes. She picks up this pair of white pants and her aunt goes, oh, honey, you're too big for that. Now, if that had been me, I would have like skulked in the other room. And she was like, I'll show you, and goes in the bedroom and shimmies them on. Whole life had been about, I'll show you, like bought and sold multiple businesses, never satisfied. So yes, absolutely. That's what I heard in what you said. Like, I'm going to show you. I'll show you. Yeah. Now, one other thing I was going to mention that everybody has mentioned, Susan and Lisa both, is we're really talking about that inner game of leadership. And if you don't have the inner game of leadership solid, it's really difficult to deal with the outer game of leadership, because you'll just come across as a fake and a phony, and you really won't make the difference you want to make, I don't think.
Well, yeah, you'll feel like a fraud to yourself because you're not being genuine with your own, your own way of being.
Right.
And I think, for people who are checking this out, we're using the word leadership, but that doesn't mean that you have to have leadership as a part of your job title or responsibility. Like we're simply talking about you leading self, and maybe leading others as well. But, in the authorial journey, right, you are the leader. Only you can write your book. Only you can drive the vision of your book. Only you can promote the book and be the spokesperson of the book in the best way. Other people can support and assist, but nobody will care about your book the way that you care about your book as an author. And nobody can get what you know onto the page the way that you can. Yeah. Lisa.
Would you mind sharing about your latest book?
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, hey, thanks for passing the ball this way. I always forget.
What a brown noser. I
always forget that I have another book. So focused on everybody else. And I'm like, man, yeah, I say things at the front. I do this. And then I don't say anything about them. So my latest book is this beauty that's all the way in the back there, flashy and pink. Do not write a book until you read this one. Written with the fabulous Bridget McGowan Hawkins over at Press 49. And it is the desk reference that any nonfiction author who's intending to publish independently really should have by their side, post-it noted, highlighted, marked up, and referred to along the journey, because you already got enough to deal with when you're focusing on your mindset game. That why would you want to also have the challenge of knowing what comes next and how to approach the book? So this baby helps you with all of those logistics and those items, and then gives you more brain space to just, get your head on straight, do the inner work that you need that we've all been talking about today. I think,
Allie, where was that book? Where was that book when we were writing Connected? When I was writing Connected.
I know, it was being written. I didn't have it to offer anyone because I was working on it on the side. And this also was a labor of love. Even with a co-author, this sucker was a huge undertaking.
I need to get your book. I'm very ashamed that I don't have it.
Yeah.
I would need a signed copy.
Yeah, me too. Yep.
This also was like a book that ignited my own, like, am I really going to say this? Do I really have the authority and expertise to say this? Like, isn't there other people out here who are saying this already? And really, having to overcome that, or not even overcome it, just like acknowledge that while it was possible that there could be other experts out there who would disagree or who knew more, did not mean that I didn't know what I knew, and didn't mean that I couldn't share what I knew. And also I recognized that this was a voice who was popping up because, as Jen said earlier, it was popping up because I was about to play a bigger game. And I think actually, Jen, you said it was like when you go onto stage and you don't have the feeling of throwing up, then there's no stakes in it. Right.
Well, I always say, if you don't have imposter syndrome, you aren't playing a big enough game.
Yeah,
absolutely. Without a doubt. But the other thing, Allie, I wanted to say is that, we are the CEOs of our own lives. Yeah. We are the CEO, whether we're like we're leading a family, we're leading ourselves. I have a 20-pound cat named Kevin. I lead him. I feed him probably too much. My vet would yell at me, but I think this whole piece of the bravery of believing in yourself is recognizing we're the CEOs of our own lives. And the other thing that struck me while you were talking, look at the diet and exercise industry. How many flippin' books are there on diet and exercise? And there keeps being more. Yep. We don't ever, I'm going to try this one. I'm going to try that one. I'm going to try that one. I'm going to try that one. We never question or doubt the multitude of Whole30, keto, Atkins, Weight Watchers, cabbage soup diet, blah, blah, blah. Yet we question ourselves to figure out whether we have something to say. Guess what you do? But the bravery and believing yourself, I think, starts by we are the CEOs of our own lives.
Yeah.
So you've read my book already.
Yeah, I did. I just read it. Carrier pigeon brought it, went right through it.
It dropped it in. Well, there's a great quote. You work hard every day and you see results. And I believe this issue of bravery and believing in yourself, you know what? It's just like working out your body. So you work out, whether you do yoga, you're doing weights, whatever, and you see results in that, right? You see your muscles, you see how your body's responding to that. Believing in yourself is doing that inside out work. It's the same thing, but it's in your mind. Yeah. It's in your mind. And there's a word we haven't used here today. I just have to bring it up because no, it's a 3-letter word, not a 4-letter word. It's a 3-letter word, joy. And honestly, if you can't create joy for yourself every day, then there's no way that you can create joy for anybody else. And it actually, I think it's like it's cyclical, right? The more that you can find joy every day, the more that you feel confident, the more that you feel, believing in yourself, you can do anything. And I am a person, I was laughing. You tell me I can't do something. You wait, Houston.
Oh yeah.
It'll get done. Even if it's like I owe Allie 50 pages in 24 hours.
I will do it. Oh my gosh. we could talk about this forever. But I think we've provided a lot of value for today's listeners, whether they joined us live and were very quiet as they were eating up everything we had to say coming out of our pie holes, or if they're catching it as a replay, like a carrier pigeon has brought to them a really fabulous episode of Open Book Broadcast. Look, I'm just going to pull in all the things right at the end.
Call back. You go, comedian. You go.
So thanks to each and every one of you. We are at time. So I do want to encourage everyone. I already put into the comments where to find each of these fabulous books. Buy them as a set, put them under the tree or around the menorah this holiday season. Please go and get these books. They are fabulous and they are well done. And you will gain so much from the thought leadership and expertise of the women who have joined me today. You can connect with every single one of these women on LinkedIn. You can also connect with Lisa on Facebook. I will get those links into the comments for everyone so that they know where to find you all. I do want to let everyone know that we have one more open book broadcast for the year coming up on December 10th. And this is going to be about following your intuition during the book writing process. And I also have something real fun happening the week of December 2nd called the Ho 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 Show. That's going to be live at 12:30 for Hotline, Holiday, and Hot Seat show for aspiring authors. We're getting fun. We're getting real. We're getting seasonal. It's going to be a good time. So please join me that week. Mark your calendars. It'll be really fun to be spending some time with you at the top of December. Thank you, ladies, for joining me for Open Book Broadcast. I appreciate each and every one of you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks, Allie. Great to be with everybody.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. That concludes today's episode. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Have a joyful day.